On this week's Hockey Inside Out, Max Domi loses it, and will the Habs be okay with no Byron or Drouin? I think they'll be fine. Welcome to Hockey Inside Out, which is brought to you by Madison's New York Grill and Bar in downtown Montreal on Drummond Street across from the Bell Centre. Your home away from home for Canadiens road games. Okay, we have a brand new panel here today. The rest has been fired over last week's Don Cherry episode. We have Jack Todd from the Montreal Gazette, also a sports columnist from the Montreal Gazette, Pat Hickey, and he is a very funny and widely respected Montreal comedian who is an unapologetic Bruins fan. I don't know how you sleep at night in Montreal. Joey Elias is with us. In last Friday night's dominant win over the Washington Capitals, some Canadiens players left the ice with a little more than a couple of points for their team. Paul Byron suffered a knee injury, and despite being completely run over by Alexander Ovechkin in the second period, Jonathan Drouin returned to the game but left Washington with a wrist injury. Both players will be out indefinitely and will require surgery. Do the Canadiens have enough depth to withstand losing Jonathan Drouin and Paul Byron for an extended period of time?
No, I think they're dead in the water. No, I'm just kidding. Honestly, I think they've got a very good shot. They of getting through this okay. I think it was Stu Cowan that posted something interesting today, which is that they're fifth in the league in scoring now, and to look and see where they are when Drouin comes back, and you can see what kind of impact it had. But, you know, teams are missing better players than him. Toronto's missing Marner. Pittsburgh has Sid out. If they can weather that, the Canadiens can weather Drouin. The pity to me is that Byron hasn't found his stroke all year, and Drouin was finally being the player that we thought he was going to be all along, and then this happens, and it's hard to see what happens later.
The silver lining here is that Tatar has moved back into that top line, and he fits in very well with Dano and Gallagher. So, you know, they don't lose anything there. They've made a change where Domi has moved out to the wing, basically taking Drouin's spot, and they're counting on Suzuki playing in the center and picking up his game, getting better with every game. So on the top two lines, they're okay. They still have to get more from the third line. That's Kotkaniemi. Again, Kotkaniemi and Byron, both on that line, both had slow starts. They've got to be a little better. The fourth line is solid. I think they've got depth on the forwards. If they lost two defensemen, they would have been in a lot of trouble. But I think they're going to be able to weather this storm, and hopefully Drouin will be back in 6 weeks rather than 8. We're still not sure exactly how serious the damage is to Byron, and we'll have to wait and see what the doctors say on that.
Injury's part of the game, and every team's going to go through it. As Jack mentioned, teams have big injuries. I'm a Bruins fan. Bergeron's out right now. But good teams find a way to make those fringe, I call them fringe players, the guys that, you know, can go from the third line to the fourth line. This is a guy, you know, Charles Hudon, this is his chance now. You know, if anybody wants to take a chance on him, this is his place. Him and Drouin, I think, are about an inch difference in height. They're both left wingers. You want to see if this guy belongs? Now's the chance. So what happens when injuries happen is somebody has to pick themselves up. And the only thing I say is Byron is like a spark plug. So I don't know how you replace that kind of energy in the locker room, but good teams find a way to make it happen, and I think they can.
Okay, are you worried that Jonathan Drouin, the loss of momentum, will mess up his game, or do you think he'll pick up from where he left
I would
off?
be worried. That would be my biggest concern, is because it took him a long time to get his sea legs here.
Yeah.
And having gotten them, you know, you see guys all the time. I wonder about PK Subban. Can he possibly be as bad as he looks this season? You know, they come back from injuries, but are they really back? That's the question. And, you know, you don't know about him. Even Gallagher, you know, those broken hands that he suffered, it took him a while. And Gallagher's as tough as they come, but still.
Yeah, I think on the wrist, you know, again, I think there's less concern over the wrist than if he had something wrong with his legs or his knees or something like that. You know, I think it's an easier injury. I think the main thing that's made him better this year is his mind is in the game. And I think I think he'll be hungry when he comes back.
Okay. The Canadiens controlled the second period on Tuesday night against Columbus. They ended up losing that game 5-2. Why do you think they have trouble putting away games against teams that they should beat?
Well, that's an interesting question. I mean, they come up with big win in Washington. They come up with big wins in Vegas and Arizona on the road. Teams that, on paper games they shouldn't win, and then they lose games that they should win. They struggled to beat Columbus here last week. Columbus has no offense at all. They got 5 goals last night. There were some serious defensive mistakes, and the goaltender again was just mediocre. I mean, he's not the greatest goaltender in the world this year, and that's something that they've got to sort out. I don't think it's anything serious. I think he just, at some point, they've got to be able to try to figure out. I think what's happening there is in the head rather than physically, and but that's a game. You thought going into the third period, the Canadiens have scored, I think they're 4th in third period goals this year in the league. They've been dynamite in the third period, and last night there was no pushback at all.
Yeah.
The key to what you said, though, is they were pushing in the second period. Why do they come out flat so much? That's the question. What's going on pregame that they can't come out firing on all cylinders like they did in the second? Why do they have to find? Maybe they're a team that gets motivated when they're behind the 8 ball. Maybe they should let the other team score first, and then they get the fire lit. But they come out flat a lot against teams that they should come out. They should just come out hard every game. Period.
There's a long list of people now that they should have taken points from and didn't. Detroit, Minnesota, New Jersey, Columbus, and those points count too. I didn't want to say anything before, but you looked at the schedule through this. They had a brutal schedule in October, and you looked ahead at right now, and it looked like, okay, this is the time to make hay, put some points in the bank, and boom, you go lose to Columbus. So.
Up until last Saturday night, Max Domi had 0 penalties this season. And in the third period against New Jersey, he got 3 penalties, one of which was an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty for kicking an opposing player's stick down the ice out of frustration. That led to the equalizing goal, and New Jersey ended up winning that game. What got into Domi in the third period?
He was mad over his good friend Don Cherry.
Think he was upset?
No, it could be somewhere down in there. But I remember, I think it was his first exhibition game here when he sucker punched the guy, right? And I wrote about it, and some other people wrote about it. Pat probably mentioned it, and he cleaned up his act. He really did. But he's still his father's son, and now and then it's got to erupt.
Every now.
It's a miracle that he got as far as he did without getting a penalty. Because there were games that looked like he was trying to get one. And, he doesn't back down from anybody. He pushes there. Unfortunately, what happened is these penalties hurt. The Canadiens can't afford to take penalties because they've got the worst. As of this morning, they have the worst penalty kill in the league.
Wow, they're 30th?
They're 31st. Wow. They dropped another spot, and they gave up a goal last night, again on a power play. They can't do that. They can't afford to take penalties, especially since the penalty kill is so bad.
As a diabetic myself, I'm just going to blame it on low blood sugar.
Okay.
No, in all honesty, look, Max is always been, whether it was the juniors, whether he was with the Coyotes, he's always had at least 1.2 penalties a game. And I think what happened, look, he hasn't been scoring in the last little while. He's probably a little frustrated. And by the way, I don't think his penalty was the cause. Yes, he was in the box, but the penalty kill, they could have lost that game on any penalty because, as Pat said, I think they're 32nd now in the league. Yeah. So wow. I think Domi, I agree with Jack. He did clean up his act a lot, but he's a chirper. He's always going to get these unsportsmanlike penalties just because of the player he is. And I don't want him to change the style of player that he has been up until now.
Especially on a team that doesn't have a whole lot of sandpaper anyway since Shaw left. You need at least one guy like that around. So
maybe he needs to start chirping more. The first half of this show has been brought to you by Madison's New York Grill and Bar in downtown Montreal on Drummond Street across from the Bell Center. Book your holiday parties and corporate events here. Okay, are you surprised that Thomas Tatar has 20 points in his first 21 games?
I'm not. When I saw him in Detroit, I thought, if this guy played the Canadiens every night, he'd get 100 points a year. He looked really good. And then he went to Vegas, and I really don't know what happened there. He's a good player. maybe not quite at that level, but I really like Tatar. Man, what a trade that has been for the Habs.
Yeah, I think they were lucky because he did have a bad time in Vegas. I don't think they expected him to just be a rental. But what happened is he got there. It was a set lineup. He wasn't playing very well. He had an adjustment period to a new team. And I think that's one of the reasons why he was available for the Canadiens in the Pacioretty trade. I'm a bit surprised he had 20 points because for a while there he was in Julian's doghouse. He got a big chance to turn things around when Julian got hurt. We got run over the other night by Ovechkin. And Tatar went in there and ended up with 4 points, career high. So he's on a point-a-game pace. I don't think he's going to maintain that over the entire season, but I think it's pretty clear that he's got an excellent shot. I'd say a 99% chance of bettering the career high that he had last year, 58 points. I think he's going to get 60, 65 points. That was one of the big question marks, whether he and Domi were going to be able to capitalize and move on from the season they had last year, and both of them have done it so far.
I think the only person that shouldn't be surprised is Tatar himself. You know, everybody, I never saw him as a point-a-game player, ever. I think if anybody has them in their hockey fantasy pool, you know, nobody drafted him in the first 4 or 5 rounds. So that says something about what the majority of people thought of him. Can he keep this pace up? I mean, obviously everybody in the city would love to see it. I think 70, 75 points is a very good season for somebody.
Great season.
You know, who is he going to lead the Habs in points at the end of the season? Perhaps, but again,
he'll go to the net 5 times as much as Pacioretty would, no matter how many points he gets. So.
I think that trade was great on so many levels because, one, he does have a better shot. And I think his hockey, I'm not taking anything away from Pacioretty, but I think Tatar's hockey IQ, which everybody talks about, much, much higher.
Yeah. And he's not the Italian Prince of Denmark. I always felt like Pacioretty was going through these existential crises that kept him from
Italian
realizing.
Prince of Denmark. That's a good one. I like that. He's got more grit. You can say that for sure.
Yeah.
Than Pacioretty. How would you rate the play of rookies Nick Suzuki and Cale Fleury so far this year? Have they exceeded expectations?
Does that include the mistake Fleury made last night or not?
You can include it if you want.
I mean, that was, you know, not clearing the puck at the blue line caused a goal indirectly with some lucky bounces thrown in there, but. Yeah, to me, he's been the biggest surprise. I wasn't surprised at Suzuki. Fleury, what is he, second on the team in hits on top of everything else?
Yeah.
Seems to be a smart kid. He's got some things to learn still, but, you know, there's an awful lot of this either here or immediately on the way. This is a good team now and a better team to come.
In the beginning of training camp, everyone was talking about Josh Brook and how he was going to make the team, and he didn't. And I think there's a lesson to be learned for Josh Brook. Look at the trajectory for Fleury. Went down to Laval last year, worked hard, learned how to play the game, learned how to play the right way, came up this year. He was in and out of the lineup in the beginning of the season, but now I think he's in there to stay, and there's a lot of things that he does. He's got a really good shot. He hits people. He doesn't look physically imposing, but he's solid, and he's going to make a difference. I think he's going to be a guy that's going to be a top 4 player before too long, a couple of seasons down the road.
I like both of them. As a Bruins fan, I'd love to see one of them on that team, especially Fleury, because as a young, rugged defenseman are so hard to find nowadays that, like, again, smaller stature, physical, rookie year, look, you're going to make mistakes that are going to cost the team. The way they bounce back from this is how you see how they're going to mature. And I think that between Fleury and listen, Suzuki is just so exciting to watch.
Yeah.
He is fast. I loved him in the juniors. I was very excited that you know, as a Montreal individual that watches a lot of Montreal games as well, this is an exciting team, whether they win or lose.
Yeah, they were exciting last year. They're even probably more so this year.
Yeah,
and Suzuki, I found it funny, his stock after the trade, and before he got here, kept going like this, you know? One day, like, he's the next Mario Lemieux, the next day he's never going to make the NHL, and now he's here, we know he's a good one.
That's it. You never know with a rookie, really, until they hit the league, and he's just...
And also they have to be given the chance, right? I mean, there are so many rookies that, you think I think of Joe Thornton that wasn't used properly and got rid of. You think of John Leclerc in Montreal that got traded and turned out to be some people would say he was a Hall of Fame number, but either way, he came back to haunt a lot of teams.
Yeah.
And these are two guys that in the future could do the very same.
Yeah.
I hope they are able to hang on to all these players.
Yeah, it could get dicey, but at least most of the ones that are really starting to make an impact now are young, so we're a ways from that big contract.
Okay. Well, that is our show for this week. We want to thank you all for tuning in at home. This week's show has been brought to you by Madison's New York Grill and Bar in downtown Montreal on Drummond Street, across from the Bell Center, where you can wait out the traffic and enjoy their $10 specials after every Habs game. Okay, how do you think the Canadiens will fare despite losing Paul Byron and Jonathan Drouin? Let us know in the comments section below. I'm Adam Susser, and we'll see you back here next Thursday.